Taylor Branch, Carter Hudson, and I walking down the street in Chicago, and we have to find a hotel for our people to stay in. I think we had about 65 people. And we had to get buses to take us from the hotel to the convention center. We went to this hotel, this hotel, this hotel, this hotel. All on the full. The convention is in town. And just faces falling. A man came up to me, a black guy came up to me, he recognized me. He said, "Can I help?" I explained the problem. He said, "Try this hotel." I said, "We've been there." So he said, "Let me try." He went in, 15 minutes later, he came back and said, "I got you 50 rooms." I said, "Hey, that's great." I said, "But we don't have any money." He said, "Why don't you ask my boss?" I said, "Who is your boss?" He said, "Elijah Muhammad." I said, "Elijah Muhammad?" I said, "The Muslims are forbidden to vote. They think of white people as blue-eyed devils. Why would he spend money to get a group of black and white people to come from Georgia to Chicago so they can vote? He'll never do it." He said, "Go see him." He set up a dinner meeting with him. I had dinner with him. And after the dinner was over, this is a patriarchal religion, you know. Women sit over here, the men sit over here. He said to the crowd there, about 50 people, about 30 people in the room, he said, "This young man is coming from Georgia, wants some money to bring people up to the convention. What should we do?" He asked the women. The women said, "We don't know him. So we've never seen him before. He'll give the money to the devil. Don't do it." All unanimously said no. He asked the men. Men said yes, men said no. He turned to me, he said, "Mr. Bond, in the Nation of Islam, we listen to the women, but we do what the men say do." He gave me $3,000 in $100 bills. I've wired it to Atlanta, and we brought our people up, and that was it.
And I'll ask this question later. The Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party attempt in '64 led the way to what happened in '68. Now I've got to ask John about Bloody Sunday, which was the second attempt to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
The first.
Was Bloody Sunday. Then there was the second attempt.
The first attempt was Bloody Sunday.
And that's when people got turned back. Would you tell us about people turning back and then what happened after that?
Well, Eleanor and Julian would know this, what happened and how it happened. SCLC made a decision under the leadership of James Belbrook, and his encouragement to march from Selma to Montgomery after a young man by the name of Jimmy Lee Jackson had been shot and killed in Marion, Alabama, the hometown of Coretta.
That's lost in the story. Why were they?
Well, my snake had been in Selma for a long time. The first snake person went into Selma in 1962. A young man by the name of Renard Lafayette to work, and he was beaten there. It was very dangerous to be in Selma, Alabama. Only 2.1% of blacks of voting age were registered to vote. He had a mean sheriff there, very big man who wore a gun on one side, a nightstick on the other side, and he carried an electric cap rod in his hand. And Julian would tell you that Sheriff Clark thought he was trying to play the role of Patton. He wore a helmet, and he was just mean. I think he woke up mean, and he was just mean and just vicious. He was a sick man, and the people were show. The only time that you could register to vote in Selma was the first and third Mondays of each month. There was only one place.
White or black?
White or black. But most of the white people voting age were registered, but very few black people were registered. You had to pass a so-called literature test, interpreting section of the Constitution of Alabama. And a county between Selma and Montgomery, Lowndes County, where Stoughton and some other one, the county was more than 80% African American, but not a single registered African American voted in the county. In order for a black person to become registered in 1962, 63, 4, 5, you had to get your name published in a local paper and get some white person to vouch for you that you were a good character. And no white person in his or her right mind was going to vouch for a black person. And so we had to create this climate, this environment. So SNCC met on the night of March 6th. On a Saturday evening, 1965, debated whether to march from Selma to Montgomery. And we don't like to talk about this much, but some of the SNCC people say, well, SDLC is going there, and Dr. King is going there, and they're going to get a lot of people hurt, and they're going to leave, and we're not going to be part of it. I took a position, this was our central committee, you were in the room. I took a position that I've been in Selma over and over again, native of Alabama. The local people wanted to march. We should march with them. Move with the people. So a young man by the name of Robert Mans.
This is very important about moving with the people. SNCC went into towns and organized the people first. SNCC did not go in and take actions by itself. Go ahead.
So late that night, a young man by the name of Robert Mans and Wilson Brown jumped in a car after the SNCC committee said to us, in effect, that if you're going to march as individuals, but not as part of SNCC. And they told me in so many words that I could march as an individual, but not as chair of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. So the three of us drove that evening, late that evening, to Selma, through Montgomery to Selma, got in our sleeping bag, went to the Freedom House. That's where we stayed. We got up early Sunday morning, March 7th, and went to church. And then after church, we participated in a nonviolent workshop, and we lined up to walk from Selma to Montgomery. And during those days, I was wearing a backpack before it became fashionable to wear a backpack. I thought we were going to get arrested and go to jail, and then I wanted to have something to read. I brought my toothpaste, toothbrush. I brought 2 books. I wanted to have something to read in jail. Had an apple and I had an orange. I wanted to have something to eat. 1 apple, 1 orange will last that long. And that was his history. And after what happened, Julian can tell the story. After we had been beaten, trampled by horses and tear gas, SNCC made a decision to pull everybody out of Mississippi and other places and come to Selma.
And there was a second march?
That was the second march. On March 9th. And Dr. King, this is Tuesday, March 9th. Dr. King made an appeal to religious leaders, to minister, priests, and rabbis to come to Selma. More than 1,000 ministers came to the point where we had been beaten. They turned around. Dr. King didn't want to violate an injunction issued by federal judge Franklin Johnson. And some of the SNCC people thought that Dr. King should have kept going. And I took a position in my own nonviolent manner that SNCC lost the right to criticize Dr. King because it never supported the march in the first place. So there was a sense of righteous indignation all across America. More than 80 cities with demonstrations. At the White House, at the Department of Justice, at American embassies abroad, people got in the street. They didn't like what happened in Selma. So President Johnson called George Wallace to Washington, and the governor met with President Johnson, but he could not assure the president that he would be able to protect us if we decided to march again. And James Warner and some other SNCC people started an effort in Montgomery with students from Alabama State and Tuskegee Institute, Tuskegee University now. And that's a former recent classic remarks I cannot repeat here. But Julian made love to, and it was at a church in downtown Montgomery.
He said, if we can't sit at the table, we're going to knock the fucking legs off the table.
No, I can't use that language. That's not a keeping with the philosophy of nonviolence. But later, we went into federal court, into Judge Johnson court, and Judge Johnson issued an order saying that we had a right to march in an orderly, peaceful, nonviolent fashion. And then Lyndon Johnson spoke to a joint session of the Congress on March 15, 1965, and made one of the most meaningful speeches any American president ever made in modern time on the whole question of civil rights, of voting rights. And before he concluded that speech that night, near the end of the speech, he said, "And we shall overcome." That was the first time an American president had used the theme song of the civil rights movement. And on March the 21st, Sunday morning 21st, 10,000 people start walking out of Selma, including Rap Bunch, Martin Luther King Jr., April Randolph, and hundreds of others. Over a 5-day period, we made it from Selma to Montgomery, and we arrived in Montgomery at more than 25,000 people. The Congress debated the act, passed it.
This is
65 Voting Rights Act, and President Johnson signed it into law on August 6, 1965.
This is very, very important because here you see, something most of us long for and never see, cause and effect. An action that produces an almost immediate effect.
See, Ellen, if you go back just a moment, after Dr. King received a Nobel Peace Prize in December 1964, he had a meeting with President Johnson at the White House. And he told the president, he said, we need a voting rights act, Mr. President. President Johnson said to Dr. King, we don't have the votes in the Congress to get a voting rights act passed. I just signed a civil rights act. And so Dr. King came back south to Atlanta and said we would write that act. And he joined SNCC in Selma, where we had been since 1962. He came there for Emancipation Proclamation celebration, January 1st, 1965.
So what you see here, you see the 64 Civil Rights Act was passed. So Johnson looked and said, what, you want another one? 65 Civil Rights Act. It was not until after the assassination of Martin Luther King that we got the 1968 Fair Housing Act. I've got to ask Julian, since this is something that from long distance I played a role in. Julian Bond won an election in Georgia. This was historic in itself to enter the Georgia House, except they refused to seat him more than once, and in order to get his seat, the case had to go all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. A number of briefs were written. I wrote the brief. I was just the legal director of the American Civil Liberties Union by that time. And so here, I was writing a brief for my friend Julian Bond, who that quickly had made a historic election, had an historic election, and found that even after being elected, he could not be seated. Would you tell us that story?
It's a long story. I'll tell it very quickly. The federal courts had ordered the Georgia legislature to reapportion itself, and in the process, they created brand new districts with no incumbents. And I found myself living in one of these new districts. I had a very good friend named Ben Brown who lived in an adjacent district, and he was running for the legislature. And he said, Bond, come on, you should run too. So I decided to run in my district. And if we had gotten elected, and both of us did, we would serve 1 year in what was normally a 2-year legislature. So he ran, I ran, some other people ran, and the first black people in the 20th century were elected to the Georgia House of Representatives. Just before, in December, before the January when I was to take office, a colleague of ours in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee named Sammy Young in Tuskegee, Alabama, as a Navy veteran, had lost his kidney, one of his kidneys, in service to his country, had to go to the bathroom more than most people. Walking home from a civil rights demonstration in Tuskegee, tries to go to the bathroom in a white-only gas station. I never heard of a white-only gas station. And the gas station owner shot him in the back and killed him. And the irony of his losing his life after losing his kidney in service to his country was just too much. And a lot of latent anti-war sentiment in the SNCC movement bubbled up to the top. And we issued a statement opposing the war in Vietnam. And it created a firestorm among conservatives and white Georgians. And Southerners are intensely patriotic people, and this was viewed as tremendously unpatriotic. And a movement began to knock me my seat. And to make a much longer story short, people had urged me to apologize, say I didn't mean it. Of course, I did mean it, and I wasn't going to apologize. And I ran into Ralph Abernathy at Pascal's Restaurant in Atlanta. He said, what are you going to do?